Welcome to the Commercial Kitchen Chronicles, the podcast dedicated to commercial food equipment repair. My name is Pat Finley. I'm a Lead Master Certified Technician at General Parts Group and a Certified Successful Trainer. My goal is to shine a light on what I believe to be one of the most interesting and rewarding industries in field service segments you can work in. I love the work I do, and I'm glad you're here listening to this podcast. In this episode, Dusty and I talk about intermittent issues and how to diagnose them. What's going on, everybody? Tonight, me and Dusty are going to talk about intermittent issues. We run into them all the time. It's kind of weird. It can be a big headache, a big hassle to figure out, but sometimes it is what it is. So what's going on, Dusty? How are you tonight?
Doing pretty good, man. Just kind of chilling out for the weekend, and been crazy busy. I think I had one day off in December until today, so I'm excited for the weekend.
Yeah, it's definitely been pretty nuts. We got a new on-call schedule starting the first of the year. It's going to be 3 of us, so that's going to be a bonus. I won't be main guy on call every other week, but I'll still have to do backup stuff for some of the stuff the other guys don't work on, but in tech support. But that beats actually being the guy out there every other weekend. So
that's true.
There we go. So. No, you brought up the topic talking about intermittent issues, and that's a pretty good topic. I mean, guys will get beat up on that stuff all the time. You've ran into anything recently on that, or just a talking point? Or
well, with the intermittent, sorry, my internet lagged out right there.
You're good.
Mainly just because I was thinking the past couple of weeks, and then all this week, just while I'm working, I'll think of like ideas we could bring up or something I'd want to touch base on, and then I don't write them down and I forget them. I guess the main thing that dude, I'm like, I've had probably 5 quality ideas. I'm like, oh, it'll be perfect, and then you asked me that, and I was like, dang, I have no idea.
Better start writing stuff down, man. Start writing stuff down. So, but no,
I write stuff.
For guys who don't know what intermittent issue is, it's you get there and the unit's working. Or you get there and you reset a high limit and it runs fine for an hour or so and you take off, the next day it goes out again. So that's the kind of stuff we run into in our line of work. Like one example I'll use right off the bat is it's cold right now. So it's a hot topic. It's headmasters on refrigeration, on walk-ins and stuff, with outdoor condensing units. Right now, if you have headmasters, you're low on charge, you'll be bypassing and, your system won't keep up. So, but what happens is, say in October, it starts getting cold at night. Customer comes in the morning and their box will be running 44, 45 degrees. They call it in, and by the time we get there 4 or 5 hours later, it's up above 40, 45 degrees, sunshine, and and the box is done temperature running fine. And a lot of guys just think, well, it was in defrost or you got a bad thermostat or something, and they don't bother to check, the headmaster, and they don't bother to check the charge, and come to find out, the unit was charged up over the summer. And someone charged a full sight glass when it's hot out, or, it does have a leak and that kind of stuff. So that's just, one I run into quite a bit, but you just got to stick with them. So,
yeah. And that's kind of like, and they're always annoying. They're always a pain. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times there's a pizza oven, a Baker's Pride oven that I think I'd went there like twice. And, they say, oh, it wasn't light. And you get there, everything's fine. Even test thermopile, it's fine, under load. And, it's to temperature. And they're like, oh, what's working now? And a lot of customers will be like, oh, good thing it's working. It just started working. But it ticks me off because I'm like, if I didn't fix it, it's going to go out again. I'm just not confident in it at all. So it's, most of that stuff, like you said, you just got to, I guess what I've found is just communicate with the customer. And sometimes you can most times, like you can test like a thermopile on that, sometimes you'll catch it a little bit weak or ohm out some sensors. And sometimes you can catch it and you'll have those customers that say, we'll just fix it just to be preventative. But sometimes you have those ones that's like, if it's working, don't freaking touch it.
Yeah.
And so it goes out again.
Persistence is the key with them. You gotta ask questions. I mean, a lot of the younger guys, newer guys won't ask questions, and you really gotta, especially if you're out there one time and you think you got it, it goes down again, you come back and it's still working. You got to stick with the customer. You got to talk to the customer. Hey, what's all running when this happens? what are you guys doing? You know, are you cooking a certain thing, or is everything coming on heating up? I mean, you know, gas pressure will do it a lot of times too. Say,
Yeah.
um, you know, in the morning when they first turn everything on, you know, a fryer will fall flat on its face. You'll have pilot issues, but you know, once everything else is heated up, it's not on all the time. That fryer may run perfect. You know, it could be a gas volume issue. So there's a lot of
Hmm.
different things, but you got to stick with it. You know, I like to when I run into an intermittent issue, I always like to ask the customer, "Hey, what time of day does it happen? What are you guys doing when what are you guys doing when when it goes down?" And you just got to stick with it. You got to be with the customer. So,
Hmm.
you know, if you got a schedule, you know, to come back when it acts up in the morning, you know, do that. But I mean, you just got to stick with it. It's our job to figure out what's going on, and you know, just hitting a reset on a high limit and leaving is not the answer.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's gonna go out again. I mean, sometimes you have those high limits that are just bad and they'll get too
Yeah.
spongy. But I mean, a lot of times it's like I had a newer fryer, and what it was doing was it was putting out the rollout switch in the morning when they try to light, so I had to reset it a couple times. And you go out there and it's the temperature, cycling fine, no issues. And you can't. And even if you shut it off, you're already at temperature unless you let it cool for a little bit and shut it back on. You can't find anything wrong. And I had one like that, and to come to find out, the solenoid, like the I think it's called a PCB solenoid that actually uses the runner tube to clean the burners before it brings on the
Oh,
pilot.
the cleaning
The cl-
function on the Pitcos. Yeah, they're famous
which
for the cleaning function on Pitcos. They're famous for that solenoid sticking, and it doesn't
yeah,
do it all the time. It's like just
no,
randomly it sticks sometimes. And that solenoid is expensive, man.
it is.
If it's out of
No,
warranty, dude, I pull the wire off the solenoid and let her go, man. I mean,
and that's what I've heard before because I've always dug into it. When I first started working on these, I was like, why the heck does it do this? Because the first time I lit up a fryer to work on it, and I saw that the cleaner function on that valve, like the flame shoot out, and I was like, what the heck was that? And then once you read it, it's like that's normal function, but it's kind of I think it's a kind of a silly feature, and like you said, it's stuck. But I took a wrench and tapped on it, and it closed back off, and then it started operating properly. But that kind of lets you know, like, okay, this thing's sticking. Got to swap that out. So I ended up doing like the guts and the solenoid, the whole body of it.
that changes
Uh,
real easy. It's just got the compression fittings on there. It pops off and right on. It's
yeah,
real easy to change, but that thing is expensive for what it is, man.
I can't remember what it was. Like 320 something bucks, I think.
That's why I said
Yeah.
I always give the customer, especially out of warranty, I give them the option. I'm like, look, this is like a pre-clean thing, cleans out that burner screen. Um, I've seen some that are 15 years old that's never worked, and the burners are clean. So,
Hmm.
um, I mean, I understand why it's on there, but I don't see it actually doing much.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen guys, just like you said, just pull that wire off because I think you just take the ground off of it, and it won't even function.
Yeah, yeah. So we got some guys in here. We got Rich Malky's in here, Adrian, not Adrian. Everything HVACR is in here. Matt Waxer's in here. Matt's a really smart dude. He does a lot of Aeon stuff up in Canada, a lot of big
Okay.
rooftop units and stuff, and he's really job as a service tech is to PR psychology at the customer. So yeah, that's right. I mean, talk to the customer, and like you said, the manager may not know what's going on though. You may need to talk to the person that actually turns the stuff on in the morning, or the cook that actually does the stuff in the morning. Um, managers, I mean, the managers may not even know. They just it's broke,
Hmm.
and they call and that's about it.
That's
What's
who
going on, Michael
try to
Brown?
develop a good relationship with the cooks and like the kitchen manager, just because they're usually the ones that will have all the information on what it was doing, what they did before, what it did after, and then when it started working again. Because I chased one down for a while, and I was like, when's it? It was a tilt skillet. And I'm like, when does this thing go out? And they're like, oh, when we clean. So they're spraying water on the ground, and it was shooting up, and the seal's in that control box where the thermostat is. It didn't have bolts on the bottom, and there was no seal there. So they're spraying in there, water splashing up on that thermostat, and shutting it off. So
Yeah, they're people are their own worst enemies when it comes to cleaning.
yeah.
Water is. You see so many kitchens, they got that red high temp, high pressure hose hooked up, and
Hmm.
they come out and they just spray everything. And I mean, that'll cause other issues too. I mean, where stuff's wet in the morning and won't light, it dries out
Hmm.
later on in the day and it comes on. So
Exactly. Yeah.
you just gotta know you just gotta talk to customers. I mean, I can't emphasize that enough to all the guys. I mean, talking to the customers like your number one priority. They're going to tell you what it is. I mean, and most time they'll tell you if they got it wet or if they did something they shouldn't have done. I mean, they'll admit to it. They don't know. I mean, they're doing what thought they were told or instructed to do, but in reality, they're causing a lot of their own problems.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's like you said, you just got to keep with it, keep persistent. And I mean, sometimes you can kind of narrow it down to some things and then have a conversation. But mainly, I always wish, they would call me when it's down. But obviously, if they can get it to work and they're busy and it's dinner and it's lunch, they're going to get it to work. They're not really going to wait on me. But it'd be nice, if they did.
Yeah, I've had some coolers where they do some weird stuff, and I've had to put data loggers in where we measure the temperature inside the box and temperature like the condensing area.
Hmm.
So I mean, it gets to a point where you've narrowed down everything you can, and it's still gonna mess up. So
Hmm.
data loggers play a big part of that too. So I've had to put
Yeah.
data loggers on gas lines, and that's kind of a rare one, but it happens, especially once again getting cold again. So in my area, a lot of gas heat. We all know that when they build these kitchens, they expect them for this many BTU, and then all
Hmm.
of a sudden, they've added on 10 more pieces and jammed more stuff in there. It may work in the summer, and then in the winter, you start firing up rooftop units to sucking gas, and gas falls flat on its face. I mean,
And that's a huge thing that's kind of ignored is, how many BTUs you're putting out, and you see that a lot when customers will switch from, I saw a customer once switch from a pot burner, one of those open top Vulcans,
mhm.
to a tilt skillet, and they increased the BTU on that. And it's you don't really they didn't really affect it, but it could be an issue if you keep doing that. If you keep pulling stuff and put it in for something that's going to pull a different amount of gas, you just got to kind of that kind of gets swept under the wayside a lot, but it's up to like us as the installing
Yep, you gotta
contractor.
yep, you gotta do your homework. Check gas pressure definitely, and you gotta check volume too. I mean, I've had guys
Mm,
go in and check pressure, and that's the only thing running. I'm like, well, yeah, that's cool, and that's the only thing running. Fire everything else up, and it falls on its face.
yeah.
I had a fryer at a seafood place or a boil place, and it was weird. They had a big line that had a big giant boiling pot on there. It was like huge. It was like a tilt skillet, but it really wasn't. It was just made into this line. And it had a
Mm,
drain valve on, so you drain the water off. But it had huge burners under it. That's what they boiled their crab and stuff in. And then they
okay.
had like four walks, but it came across the front. The gas line did, and it hit everything. And then it came out the end of that line, and they ran it over to two fryers. And the very last fryer never worked. It'd work, and then when it get busy, it'd fall on its face. Like, oh, every time we're cooking, lunch, we get busy. This fryer just dies. This thing's a turd. I had
Yeah.
several guys out there, and oh, it's fine. Gas pressure's this, gas pressure's that. I was like, okay. I was like, I'm gonna get there during lunch. They're like, oh, no one come during lunch. We're too busy. I'm like, no, it fails during lunch. I'm gonna come during lunch. So I
Hmm.
put my Bluetooth manometer on there, and I just stepped off to the side so I was out of the way. Just watched it. It literally the gas pressure went down to like 0.25 inches of water column. I was like, you
Oh,
got to be
geez.
kidding me! Like,
There it
well,
is.
I'm like, you guys are your own worst enemy.
Yeah. So it's everything else is sucking it because, like you said, you can't really test it individually in a lot of cases like that. You got to see what total load is, and that's what when I was in that Cephesa class, Dan Reese actually emphasized that a couple times. Is don't just check your gas pressure when this fryer is working or this oven's working. Get your total load, your total volume,
Yep.
because that'll and that itself can turn into an intermittent issue or a callback, and then it seems like nobody knows what's going on with it when in reality nothing's wrong with it. It's what's being delivered to it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And you'll see like a lot of stuff now when you do startups, it wants you to check gas with everything on.
hmm.
It tells you turn everything on full, and check it in. And it's common on combi ovens, everything falls on its face and runs out of gas, but
Yeah,
they want to catch it before it becomes an issue because they don't want to send us out on a service call. Hey, this thing's not lighting, and come to find out that no, someone didn't do their homework when they installed it, and just don't have enough gas.
exactly. Yeah, and that's like I said, it's up to us as the installing contractors to do our work because if we don't, somebody will eventually come and do it for us. So,
Yeah. So Matt Waxer, the chemical composition of natural gas also changes depending on the time of year, which will also affect the BTU per pound of gas. Yeah, I don't know if you follow him or not on Instagram, but he goes by the HVAC doctor, and the dude is
okay,
legit. Like he's smart, man. He's like one of the smartest guys I've ever seen on there. He does some crazy stuff with some of these Aeon units, so he's definitely a good follow.
Okay. I feel like I might follow him on Instagram. If I don't, I'll give him a follow. There was some. It may be him. I don't know if it's the same guy, but I if it's not him, I can't remember. It may be, but he had a pot or a drain pan underneath the unit, like way up suspended in the ceiling, and he used one of those transfer pumps to get all the water out of it because it overflowed and transfer it outside. And which is like a simple idea, but I'd never thought of that until I saw it. And now that's all out. Like if I got to empty a drain pan, yeah, I'm bringing out the transfer pump. I'm just running a vinyl tube outside to the sink. I'm not, dumping, because for the longest time you use a shop vac and stuff. But I saw that and I was like, holy crap, man, that's
Yeah, transfer pump and a hose, your best friend.
yeah, man.
So what other things you run into with intermittent issues? Just you'll get the fryers that'll run away occasionally. You'll have some gas valves that stick. It'll cause some issues.
And that's mainly stuff like that, like solenoids, are a big problem with that. A lot of ice machine stuff, notorious for. It's a perfect example. There was actually had a service call. They had an ice machine, and I went there. They said it wasn't producing ice about, I think, 2 weeks ago. They get there full bin of ice. By the time I get there, it's got a full bin of ice, and it's making ice. And I check everything, make sure everything's in line, check switches, check cleanliness of it, and it's good to go. And before that, somebody else had been out there too, same thing. But I went there today actually, and the pump motor was bad in it. What it was doing is the motor was intermittently working, dying a little bit. That obviously that float switch would open and it wouldn't come on. So I finally found it dead today, but I guess it took that motor just dying all the way. And it's like you said, persistency. I mean, it was annoying. And when I got there today, I was thinking in my head, I was like, man, I'm gonna get there to a full bin of ice. Show up, pop the bin, empty, nothing's running.
You're like, finally.
Finally, it's broken. There it is. So,
yeah,
of course, it's holiday weekend when it breaks.
I've ran into a lot of motors, especially like fan motors, anything that has capacitor. Capacitor's weak, and sometimes some spots that motor stops, it may start, and some spots it may not. I mean, convection ovens are famous for that. South Bend convection ovens. The motor will stop. You'll close the door and it just hums. It won't start. It gets a bad spot in the winding and it just stops. It stops there. A lot of times you can spin it to a different spot, close the door, it takes off, and it runs.
Have you changed one of those motors in the South Bend recently?
The fur motors, the sealed weird silver ones with all the fins on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just changed one recently, but the one I was sent was different than what was in there. So I guess they're switching to the new
They changed it. It's a fur FIR is I think the manufacturer. It's a sealed motor. It's got big aluminum fins on it and stuff. I don't think you can change the start capacitor. I think it's internal. They're pretty good. The older ones had a problem of sucking in a lot of heat, so I've had pretty good luck with these. I've only changed maybe one or two of them. I used to change the old ones all the time. So
okay, yeah, and I pulled it out of the box. I mean, it fits. You mount it, and it fits in there just the same. It just looked different. So I verified part number, and it's just kind of what they're switching to. So I was assuming there was some type of bulletin or service issue with the old ones.
No, they just changed manufacturer. It's something a little more reliable.
Speaking of that, you changed any sensors recently on a Pitco fryer anymore?
I think we've got them all wrapped up, the ones I've been dealing with.
That last time I was on here, I've changed 2 since then. The next day, I found one bad, but I had one in my truck.
I think it's kind of chilled out. I think they got most of them out of there. I haven't had to do it. I rarely get to work on that kind of stuff, dude. I always get the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Especially with some of the new guys starting up, they get to do some of the other stuff for me. So I take some of that stuff off, but I'll do them on call or on the weekends. I pretty much always volunteer to work Saturday, just so I can try to, we're understaffed and over on calls. And so I try to help out on Saturdays. A lot of times I'll run, especially if a warranty manufacturer or something, I'll try to run that and take care of that on a Saturday. Yeah, Greg said not lately. I haven't done any in the last couple of weeks, so we may have ran them all out.
Yeah, maybe they're until next time.
Dude, it was bad. I literally would change them, and then when I change it to, it would go down the same week. I'm like, you got to be kidding me! Like,
I haven't had changes. I haven't had one do that, but I have. I was at one location and changed the temperature probe sensor on. I think it was a first in the bank, and then I was still there, and the third one went out, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? I'm right here." So it's you kind of. I guess I always tell people, like, with anything, your first year is kind of where you're going to catch a lot of those kinks. If it had some issues in the factory, you're going to kind of catch it the first year, because a lot of customers are like, oh my God, why do you got to work on this so much? It's like, well, it's mechanical, stuff happens. There's going to be
Yeah,
kinks.
I don't know what the blame was. I don't know if they had a bad vendor making them or what, but it was crazy, and they all did the exact same thing. So I think there's something in the chemical makeup that just failed on them and caused the issue. Because like once you hit like 275, your probe's dropping, but your temperature's rising. It's like,
Yep.
whoa, when did it turn to NTC instead of PTC? How's it do that at a certain temperature? Just okay, I'm gonna start doing this, but
Yeah, and
it
that's
do it.
exactly what it's doing. Most of the ones, like you said, would be at 275. I had one that was reading like 135, and it was like 326 in the tank. I was like, oh my gosh, it's way off,
Yeah,
way off.
I've
But
had. I mean, they burn up a lot of high limits. That those things
mhm,
run away like that.
yeah,
I
so
mean, those high
I've
limits aren't
done.
made to be reset all the time, and people were just resetting them, and could get them by, or they'd be busy
Mhm,
and they just reset it. And as long as you keep throwing product in there, it's not going to over temp. So
yeah, and that's the thing too. Like you never should, reset those high limits more than a few times, and most of those times those probes will put it out. I think a few of those I just did the probe and the limit just because the limit was, spongy when you pushed it in and wouldn't
oh yeah, I
reset.
had some of
So
them that wouldn't even reset. I'm like, how many times you guys press this? Oh, until it quit pressing. Okay.
all right. That's not good. That's what I just changed a high limit the other day on a fryer. I'll have to get the model number for you, but it's the Pitco Frylator, and it's the ones with the blue board on the front.
Hmm.
I can't remember. It's got the vertical burners, like the upright burners,
Huh.
and those high limits are a pain to get to, because you got to snake in through those burners, and you got to use a wrench, and you have 3 inches of clearance to fit in there, so you got to like Bugs Bunny or wrench back and forth to get it loose, and then get the new one back up there. So at least the new ones are easy to work on. So
Greg says Pitco says his resets are good for 1,000 resets. I don't
oh
know about all
wow,
that, but
I
Greg
don't
would
know if
know. I want to
yeah,
have
that's
Greg on. He's a coworker. He's a senior tech in my market, and he's been doing 38 years. I'm trying to get him to come on the show and talk about changes he's seen in the last 38 years in the industry. So
I
maybe
feel
I'll
like
get
that
him
would
talked
be
into it.
yeah, that would be a good guy to be on, just the guy who's kind of been there, done that, probably full of knowledge too. So
Yeah, as long as he's not grumpy, he's all right.
that's what you get, man. You can't have, the guy that knows it all, and a sunflower all the time. You got to deal with the grumpiness. It's I was talking to a guy. Do you know a guy named Dwayne works up there? Or no.
Yeah, I know Dwayne.
Did, all right. I meant to ask you personally,
Where'd
but
you see him at?
well, I work with a guy down here that knows him. He because I said
He
I was
must
like
have
a
used to
friend of mine.
work for us, and
He worked for uh General Part. Well, he worked for General Parts, but Service Solutions Group as well. But he asked if I knew Dwayne. I was like, no, his name is Pat, because he was asking who did the show. So
Greg's laughing. So Greg, me and Dwayne have had our issues in the past, man. I'll leave it at that. I'll be nice.
I didn't mean to bring that up right
Oh no,
now.
we can talk about it later. I'll just be nice for now. Um,
Dwayne's a good guy. Yeah, moving
no,
on.
he's he. Yeah, I mean, when he wants to work, I mean, we all have our days we don't want to work, and so.
No.
But I mean, he's smart. Just you know, been doing this a long time, and a lot of guys get burned out on it. So
I am. I mean, that's true. It's like, I try to be 100% all the time, but man, sometimes you do hit those days, those weeks where you're just, you're kind of not slacking, but you're not 100% to par. It's just burnout, man. You got to recognize it and deal with it accordingly, though.
yeah, I mean, I have days where I'm like, I can really just do this and this thing will run and I can leave and I'll be out of here. But I'm like, I know that's not right. I need
Yeah.
to make sure it's done right. So,
Yeah.
and that's what sets, a great tech away from a good tech is willing to, see it through or stick it out. So,
Exactly. And that's like, you just got to bear down, man. Get it done. Because it's not, sometimes I feel the burnout, but usually it's just, procrastination is where that burnout comes from. If you just really get through all that stuff and get it done, then you're like, okay, that's out of the way. Kind of take a breather, and that's what I was looking for now. Holidays, man, get me to the holidays. I'm good.
I know my guy I talk to all the time at my work about my stuff, with this and the guy I deal with. And He's like, just take time off. He's like, don't do anything next week. Don't post on social media. Don't put a video out. He's like, just take some time off. I'm like, no, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Yeah, it's. I mean, I would imagine you'd get antsy because you're kind of like that at work too. You just gotta
Yeah, I
keep it
can't
moving,
sit
keep it
still,
moving.
and I always got to be doing something, man. And like I said, I took 2 weeks vacation earlier this year, and I went to Vegas for 5 days, and I went to Florida for like 9 days. And Vegas is all right because there's enough stuff to keep me busy, but when I don't have anything to stimulate me, we had a house on the beach, and the beach ain't my deal. I don't care about the beach. I mean, I'll go down there and hang out for a little bit with my friends and stuff, but I'm not
Yeah,
going to be down there. Most people get down there at 8 o'clock in the morning and drink till 5 o'clock. They come back, take a shower, and go partying all night. I'm like, that's not me, man. I can't do that
no,
anymore. I feel like death. I can't do it.
yeah,
Um,
I don't have a whole lot of party left in me.
well, by the time Tuesday rolled around, dude, I was creating a website for this, for my YouTube, for my podcast. I was like, I'm gonna create a website. So I'm sitting there at a table, looking out a window at the beach, create a website. My wife's like, there's something wrong with you.
The hustler never sleeps.
Yeah.
That's what you gotta say.
Matt Waxer, seeing it through is part of taking 5 minutes to be a better tech. Exactly. So many guys just get rushed through and get on the next call, but I mean, you got to see it through. So
100%. And sometimes it does take a little breather. Like if you, I find myself, especially early in this, because I used to do residential HVAC and I did residential automation. And so like it's not that that's easy or anything, but I wanted to make it, to the point where I did stuff really good and perfect. And I didn't want to ever be stumped on anything. So when I came to this, such a huge learning curve here, it was like every day I was like, man, am I ever going to get this? And I was just like, just beating myself up, constantly trying to read as much as I could, and then but then when you do that and you kind of lose track, then you start making silly mistakes and, you forget the basics. And so it's, you gotta acknowledge the learning curve and acknowledge when you're, I guess getting feathers instead of the chickens, as my service manager would say. So
dude, there's days I still get beat up on stuff. I'm like, man, why am I doing this? Why did I do it this way? I mean, you're never going to get 100% over it. It's always going to be there. It's just how you deal with it, how you handle it. And I mean, I can tell it's going to be one of those days though, like first call of the day, and I can't fix it. It just beats me up. And my problem is I let that sit in my head and just dwell on it all day. And it doesn't do me any good to do that because it just ruins my whole day. I'm terrible about fixating on one dumb, small little piece and just letting it spiral out of control.
Same. I do the same thing. Or like it's, you do something, then you think later on. I do that all the time. Like, I could have done that a better way. I could have been a little faster than that. I should have done this. I should have checked this first. And I'm like, man, sometimes you got to tell yourself, like, is what it is.
Greg says hot dog roller. So we picked up Myers again, doing some work, and he's got a hot dog roller. It won't go away. It's they could have bought another hot dog roller for what we're going to charge them. So,
jeez, what's to those things? Is that just a heating element and rollers and a couple motors, or?
So it just depends on the manufacturer. I think his just has tubes, and then the elements go through the tubes and they clip in. And it's got rollers that have gears on them and some seals that hold it up. It just depends on the size. Some of them are like $1,000. Some of them are gonna be a little more, but there comes a point where it's just buy another one.
Yeah. And,
that's
what I see some of those huge ones at like gas stations, like those. I think they're Hatcos, right? They're like the 3. It's got like the 3 sections on them. They're pretty massive things, but
yeah, there's some big ones. I'm not sure the manufacturer is the ones he's been dealing with. I think it was Nemco, maybe.
Maybe that's what it is. Not Hatco. Yeah.
Any big plans for holiday or anything?
I mean, I don't know. We used to do Christmas at my wife's grandma's house down in Bowling Green, but now it's like we got so much family up here, and our family just we have 3 kids, and we're just so huge. Trekking during the holidays is kind of not very feasible, so we're doing Christmas again here. We did it here last year too, and mother-in-law's on Sunday if we can make it. So
I'll be all right by Sunday. Greg's hoping they close tomorrow. He don't want to work tomorrow.
Oh yeah, you guys are working tomorrow. Yeah, that's we have a guy on call, so hopefully Godspeed.
Who's the guy that used to work with us or used to work at General Parts and SSG? Who is it?
Robert Sorensen.
Okay. Yeah,
I
I
don't know
remember Rob.
how
I
his
know who he
it,
is.
okay. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a
Uh,
few years.
yeah, and man, he worked at Certified back in the day, and well, whatever Tech 24 was before it was Tech 24. I think that was Certified, maybe. I don't know. There's
Service
some.
SSG or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah. You still see
It's
some of those stickers down here.
yeah, it's everything's changed names and it's a wild time in the industry.
Yeah, but it's all Parts Town now, anyway.
Well, Parstown or Tech 24,
Yeah, yeah.
or whoever owns Ecolab or
Is that
Smart
Hobart?
Care. Smart Care.
Oh,
No,
it's Smoker. Yeah.
Hobart's RTI or something.
Mm.
So
I see Ecolab down here sometimes, and they. I don't know. I never really knew exactly what they worked on until we had a customer that had used to use them, and because I always thought it was Smart Care because they do pest control too. They do a ton of stuff.
yeah, Ecolab's a chemical company and they do like dish machines and chemical and is there anything chemical they do it. So they went around buying up service companies and they started going under the name GCS and eventually it became Ecolab Equipment Care and then it sold off and became Smart Care. It became, I think it's still Smart Care. So, but I'm not sure
Okay.
who owns them now. It's a big group, a big conglomerate, but they do pretty good stuff. They have a pretty good training department, and they're trying to ramp up some of that kind of stuff too. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's you see their trucks around here pretty often, but I never, really knew the basis of what they did because there's so much to keep up with. So
yeah, there's so many companies, and then you'll see a mechanical company, and all of a sudden, they got 10 guys doing this kind of stuff. I'm like, I didn't have any idea they did this stuff. It's weird.
mm. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of people are. There's a ton of one-off kind of companies who are HVAC mechanical who are doing like the kitchen stuff now. But we'll see if that's good or bad. I mean, we do that. We were a mechanical company, an HVAC company, but I think we got we got a good solid foundation in the food service stuff. So
There's a ton of money to be made in the food service industry, and it's we're low on tech. So if you think you can do it, I mean, a lot of guys are going to do it. So
exactly. I mean, there's a ton of guys who won't. It's kind of like we have some new a new guy starting in January, and he's actually the son of one of the other techs here, and they're just going to put him straight on doing kitchen stuff, kind of learn it that way because he's never done anything. So it's I think the anything in this trade, so they're just going to put him in that avenue, which is good because we need guys there.
yeah, my son, he's been with us probably 4 months now, and he's learned a bunch, and he's got that attitude where he just wants to jump in. So I
Hmm.
mean, if he sees me working on something, he's trying to push me out of the way. If he's working with me, so uh, we'll see. We just gotta make sure he gets trained right and learns the right way. So
It's up to you, man. You
uh,
trainee.
that's kind of bad, though. I mean, I hate to say it. It's just because like the stuff I work on is not stuff he's going to be working on. I get all the
That's true.
combis and the crazy stuff, and he needs to be seeing all the basic stuff. And I try to
Hmm.
tell him like, hey, either you're going to put him with someone that's going to see the basic stuff, or I'm going to have to work on the basic stuff so you explain it to him. And
Yeah.
it's just
Do you do you
it's crazy.
do you like fight the urge, like since it's your son, do you fight the urge to like be too quick to help him out? As
No,
like a fatherly
yeah, I
instinct.
have to. I don't do it though. I let him struggle. I mean, because I could. I mean, we go to a job and Greg's the same way. We've been doing this long enough where you get there and you know what it is. I mean, you see the call, you know what piece of equipment is, and you've got it narrowed down 2 or 3 things, and you go right to those things. But the problem is he's not going to learn when you do it that way. So you got to be able to, okay, this is what it's doing. What do you think it is? Okay, what are you
Mm,
going to check first? And you got to kind of walk him down that path, and you know what it is because you've been doing it long enough. You've seen it before, but you got to make sure he knows how to check it. You know,
exactly. Yeah.
so
And that's where like it's like the tech support's kind of like that too. And I'm not blaming tech support on anything, but there's some where you'll call and give them the issues and what or even to the point you get to, and they're like, "Oh, it's this," and they won't really. I wish they kind of were a little more thorough for the most part and walked you through to that point because you got a lot of new guys in the industry. It's like I'm still pretty new, so I would like to know. Sometimes I have to ask them like, slow down and stop and tell me how to get to that point so I don't have to call you again, and verify something that you kind of told me off the bat.
Well, I mean, you've called me or texted me on jobs, and I'm notorious where I won't tell you the answer. I'll ask questions, and if you can't answer that question, you got to go get me the answer to that question. Generally, if you get the answer to that question, you fixed it yourself. You figured it out.
No, I
So
think I have. I've called you and I text you on stuff before, and I'll tell you what I found, and then you just won't reply. And I'm like, dang it. And then I'll
uh,
be like, oh, that's because I just told him the answer.
yeah, I'm bad about it because I want guys to feel like they learned it themselves. I don't want to tell them.
No, for sure.
I want them to, go through it and work through it themselves. And I think a lot, most guys are going to learn that way. If you just tell someone the answer, they're going to call you all the time just wanting the answer. And sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I got to think about it. Sometimes, if I'm asking you questions, I'm like, because I want to know if that's it, and most of the time it works out pretty well. So, but I got guys a lot of times, they lie to you, and that drives me nuts. I'm like, hey, what's the voltage? Oh, it's this, and then come to find out it's not. Or, you know, you'll get guys that will troubleshoot. They're checking voltage to ground. I'm like, no, you can't do that. You get a coil on a solenoid, and well, I got 120 volts to ground on both sides. Well, what do you have? From line to line. Oh, I got 120 volts to ground. I'm like, no, that's not what I asked you.
Yeah. What do you have from
Neat
point to
enough, you
point?
got both sides there. I mean, you may have, you may be missing a side of it somewhere, but guys don't get it. They just want to check the ground. I'm like, stop checking the ground.
Yeah.
Unless
I usually, I never, I mean, sometimes I do just to, just like a short verification, but I usually just, point to point is where you want to check because anything can happen in between because it's like, yeah, you have it to ground, but where's your neutral? What's your neutral?
yeah,
What's your
you got to
delivery
check
to it? So,
the path it's taking is what I try to explain to guys. The path it's taking to get there is the path you want to check. No
yeah.
shortcuts.
Yeah.
That's what
So
checking the grounds is, a shortcut. Dude, I get guys all the time. It burns them, especially
I
on
think,
solenoids and stuff. I'm like, nope, you only have half the power you need.
yeah. I mean, it's huge. I mean, sometimes you'll get away with it, but still, why? It's just as easy to check point to point than it is to ground. I mean, I don't understand. And a lot of electrical handbooks that will tell you never to check to ground to verify voltage. So
Yeah, that's like the last thing I do. Like the only time I check voltage to grounds, I want to make sure I don't have power present. Like so, if I check and see if I get the equipment turned off and verify it has power off, I check each leg to ground. That's about the only time I check to ground, just because I don't want to get lit up.
just like a safety thing too, and that's and I've heard that before too, and that's just to make sure you're not about to put your hand in something hot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but you still run the risk of I had that combi oven where the grounds weren't tied together, so they had two individual ground lugs in the disconnect, and they had each wire tied to each one. And then they didn't have it. They didn't clean the metal off the disconnect where they screwed it in. They went through pre-existing holes and actually screwed through the metal. It wasn't touching the metal; it was touching the formica behind it. So, not formica, but the whatever that board is, And it wasn't grounded. It blew an element in the boiler. Dude, it was sending like 187 volts to ground to the unit next to it. It was lighting people up. It was light. That thing is still down. It's just a nightmare, dude. I changed the elements. Had to change the high limit.
Just a wild leg on it, or just a bad ground on it?
It was wild leg, and that was just the leg that actually shorted to ground, and it was just it shocked this little old lady, dude. It lit her. She was trying to kill me off. It's bad.
Dang, man, you gotta watch out for the wild legs. They're dangerous and always verify. And I mean, you're never really supposed to use them, but
you can use them. You still want to use them on like control circuits.
Yeah.
So
hey, that's on the Cepesta test. It is. It's a question on there. Maybe. I hope.
It probably is. I always just make sure I don't have my controls, and this one was on control too. Yeah. I changed it, but rationale controls are all 240, or 208, so it really isn't a big deal on that. But yeah, dude, those pictures of that disconnect are crazy. And I showed my son it because we were there last week. I was like, "Look at this," and he's like, "What is that?" And I told him, I was like, "See that little lady over there?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "It was lighting her up."
Shocked her up, man. It's horrible.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than getting shocked and you not know. Like if we get shocked, it's like we're not expecting it, but we're kind of we're prepared for it, ish. But like if you're just cooking in a kitchen and it lights you up, I mean that's out of nowhere. It's a different story.
Yeah. Well, the problem was like the other oven did the same thing like 3 months beforehand too. It shorted the ground, wasn't grounded, and it shocked people. And then 3 months later, the other one did it. I was like, "What's the luck, man?"
I remember seeing that on your story because
Yeah.
that ground was like you could shake it, couldn't you?
Yeah,
It
I
was
could
like
shake it
loosen
and
that
you could see
screw.
it spark and stuff, man. It was nuts.
Yeah.
It never did trip the breaker just because it wasn't
Mm,
grounded. I was like, man.
yeah.
They tried telling us, oh, you guys wired that disconnect. I was like, no, I didn't. I was like, I know exactly who did.
Yeah. Was the electrician, I guess, or
Yeah, I was an electrician for a company that does like, they do what we do and they do some other stuff, but
mm,
they don't have a very good rep. I'm not going to beat them up. I'm not going to name names, but they don't have a very good reputation for the area for, doing some stuff. They do some pretty hacky stuff and they're just not properly trained. So,
I
I mean,
probably know
I'm
who you're
not beating
talking
anybody
about.
up. I mean, they're just doing what they think they know what's right and they don't really know what's right.
I feel like I might know who you're talking about, but I won't. I'll tell you later.
Yeah, Matt said use a chicken stick before touching anything with voltage applied to equipment. It's such a great habit to have. So he's talking about the little no contact voltage things. Um,
Yeah. I carry one of those and I only use it to, for safety. I don't ever
yeah,
really. I've seen guys troubleshoot with them. I'm like, what are you
no, hell
doing, man?
no. I'm
You
like,
have no idea.
well, and the first thing you got to do is you got to check something live. You know it's live. You got to check it first before you can even use it on anything else. That's how
Yeah,
I always do it. I find something's live. I check it. Okay, it's working, but I
yeah.
never do anything to risk my life with it. I mean, I couldn't really troubleshooting with them. I got one that checks like low voltage. It'll read down to like 18 volts.
Oh, that's cool.
It'll tick off.
My meter has a no contact setting on it too, but I still carry one of those. It's like a Klein stick. I just
Yeah,
like will put it around, but that's the extent of it. And even still, I'll still check with my meter because you never know.
yeah. So yeah, the intermittent issues they'll beat you up. So I mean, you got to ask questions. You got to stick to it. You got to
Hmm.
make sure you talk to the right customer. I had
Yeah.
some grills. The customer was getting wet, and everyone I talked to, it always happened at night. They come in the morning, the girls wouldn't turn on. Control fuse would be blown or GFCI would be tripped. And I'd get there, change the fuse, and it'd run. Could never figure anything out. And then one day I was there in the afternoon, and the guy that happens to close at night came in, and he's like, "Oh, the girl's acting up." I was like, "Yeah." I said, "I don't know what's going on with it." He goes, "I said." He's like, "I was like, man, this girl's really clean." I was like, "It doesn't make sense." He goes, "Yeah, I cleaned it last night, and then this morning they said it wouldn't come back on." And I was like, "Oh." I'm like, "How'd you clean it?" And he's like, "Oh, I took a bucket of water and just throw on there." I'm like, "Oh, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that."
Not at all factory spec.
Yeah. I'm like, I didn't teach you guys how to do that. I told you guys to take a damp cloth and, not throw buckets of water on there. So,
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that's a big thing too. It's a lot of stuff. Intermittent issues or issues in general are just not cleaning properly, not properly trained on equipment, and then expecting it to do things that isn't feasible. Like, obviously it's not going to work if it's wet. So a lot of people don't take that consideration. And, you see a lot of stuff just broken, either on purpose or, I mean, I had a service call once. I went out of the way on a Friday that wasn't light and I get there and the actual gas safety valve was shut off. Like, who shut this off? Like, how did this happen? And they're like, you talk to the kitchen manager, and the manager, like, oh, we didn't do that. Somebody did. I mean,
no one would touch that. I'm like, no, it just magically, like, you got to push that thing in and turn it. It
yeah,
doesn't
you
just turn
can't.
on its own. You
Yeah,
can't just,
and
like,
it wasn't.
smack it.
Yeah, and that's what I told my service manager. I was like, "Yeah, the gas is shut off," and he's like, "Oh, I wonder if like a plumber or something's out there." I was like, "No, the gas safety valve was shut off inside and it's a tubing. The one on there was two of them. The one on the right was fine. The one on the left had the gas valve shut off. I'm like, who did this? So I called other techs like, "Did you like work on this? And is there a reason the gas is shut off?" Like, no. So I turned it back on, obviously, and it's still it's still a service call to them, and so
Yeah. I used to run to a lot with, like, the Garland combination valves on like griddles and stuff where it has the pilot built into the thermostat. So if you can turn the knob to pilot and the pilot stays on. But most of the time, people just turn it all the way to off and then the pilot goes out. And they'll call in, like, hey, our pilot's always going out on this grill or whatever. And you get out there and, like, you light the pilot and everything's fine. Like, oh, it's fine. I don't see an issue with it. Everything's working. And,
mm,
you come back and they'll call back in. Hey, next day the pilot's out again. They come to find out, you guys have talked to the right person and they're turning that valve past the pilot position to completely off and it kills the pilot every time. I'm like,
yeah,
and those valves are notorious for it. People just cranking on them and turning them past where they go. So
yeah. And it's just not being properly trained on it, which is huge issue. A lot of these places, you'll get people who are either new to a kitchen or, it doesn't matter to them if something's not working. So it's just kind of one of those things where no diligence, which luckily I don't see a whole lot, but we do have some locations where that's a problem, but everyone does.
Yeah, training is the biggest issue, man. And a lot of it's constant overturn of employees or new employees coming in, and people change position all the time in a restaurant, and people don't know. They think they're doing it right. Well, I used to do it like this at my old restaurant. Well, this ain't your old restaurant. This ain't the piece of equipment you had at the old restaurant. You can't do that with this one. And
exactly. Yeah. So it's what's the worst thing you've worked on this week? Your worst job of the week. That's our new segment.
Shoot, last week would have been that fry pot change out.
Oh,
I've
that's
had a
right.
pretty easy week. Done some startups. Well, okay. Worst thing I've done this week is so at a local university they had 24 feet of Hussmann self-contained grab-and-go cases. These units have been notorious for blowing up compressors. So they put them in a cubby, a cutout in this basement, in this little food court area, and the compressor. There were 6 condensing units. There's 2 condensing units per unit. It's 8 foot, and there was 3 of them bolted together and made a 24-foot case. Well, there was no airflow up there. I actually measured discharge temp out of the compressor of over 300 degrees. Like I measured like 340 degrees one day, and so you're thinking your temperature inside that compressor is like over 400 degrees at that point. It's cooking the oil. We've changed like 3 or 4 compressors on this thing. It's 3 years old. I had one compressor down, so they wanted us to go in there, and it's 24 feet long. So you have to take 3 pallet jacks down in there. You got to take blocking. You got to jack the whole thing up at once and pull it out because everything's behind it to get it all apart. So we pulled it out. We took the middle 8-foot section out because I had that compressor, and we took the right and left section and we slid them together and bolted them back together and put them back in place. So I get them back in place and wire everything up. I still got to do drains and stuff. I was like, let's fire them up, see if they run. So the right unit, both sections ran. The left unit, the right section ran, and the left unit wouldn't run. And it just sounds like marbles. So I'm like, what the hell's going on? I get there and put my gauges on there, and I'm 150 psi both sides. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Oh no!
So
equalized compressor on.
Yeah, compressors just sound like marbles. I don't know if it broke off inside or broke the crank or what, but it's not pumping the crap. And so I gotta go back next week, and I cut out the one compressor that was good, and I brazed it over and closed it up. So I gotta go back next week and put that compressor on for that one that's up there. But that compressor that's up there is not even a year old yet. But dude, the discharge, it was so hot up there. It just sucking hot air. It's just stupid, man.
I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. You got to do something about that. Let me cool the space. Yeah. What do you do? Do you cool that area?
Well, they had it drywall. They knocked the drywall out, and then it was just sucking air from the above the ceiling. So then they put, they didn't put supply lines. They put return lines. So it was sucking the heat. It was supposed to suck the heat off the compressors, but it really didn't work very well because it had some fancy plate across the front that kind of blocked it off. People that worked on it before us had taken the panels off to block the airflow to try to. There's airflow panels that kind of diverted the air, like to suck air in to the condensing coil so they didn't blow on each other. But all that stuff was gone. It was just a nightmare, man. I guess when they put that in, it was like $100 and some $1,000. It was going to cost them an additional $50,000 to have them all remote condensed, and they didn't want to do it. And they put all the condensing units on top of there, and it just kills. They're dying left and right.
No, I mean that's just you're gonna have nothing but issues with that.
Oh yeah, this compressor dying. So these use those they're Copeland condensing units that have the digital like low pressure control with the discharge line thermostat. So if the discharge line gets too hot, it actually opens up and kills the compressor. But half of them are just hanging because they've been acting up. People that worked on before us would just knock them off the discharge line, just be hanging in the air, so they wouldn't measure anything. Just every time I got a call on it, I just cringe. I'm like, please don't be a compressor, because one compressor is easy to get to because it's on this side, but the other compressor is on the back side. And it's like, it's just
you just got to jack it up, slide it out, or take it apart.
Oh yeah, it's not so bad now. It's only 2 sections. I can manhandle it around. It's not fun, but I can manhandle it. But when it's 3 of them, you couldn't manhandle it because it was like wedged in there. It had like an inch on each side, so you couldn't like drag one end out. It was just a nightmare.
Yeah.
But so I tore it all apart, and like it came with hardware to bolt it together, and someone didn't use the hardware. They just put like self-tapping screws in there. It was like 1/8 inch steel plates, and they like use these big 3/8 head self-tappers and just like ran them in there. So I was trying to find bolts. I couldn't find bolts, so I was taking a unibit. I was drilling holes and just putting like 1/2 inch bolts, bolting it back together because I didn't trust putting it back together with freaking uh, self-tapping bolts, self-tapping screws. So that
Never
was
try. I use
mind.
bolts whenever you can't. I mean, some of that
Yeah.
stuff. I mean,
Oh yeah, I
it's gonna
can't do
strip
that.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my headache for the week. It's going to roll into next week. It looks like.
Yeah. Now you got to think about it all weekend.
It don't bother me. It's a really cool place, man. They actually use us because of me, because the guy that was a chef there, um, I went to bat for him on a unit that was warranty that the manufacturer didn't want to cover, and I was like, no, this is a manufacturing defect. And it
Yeah.
went from the manufacturer supplying the parts to end up the manufacturer paying for everything. So it was a big blast chiller. I had to change 3 TXVs, had a big giant coil in it, and it was leaking in several spots. So I changed all TXVs and did a bunch of work to it. And he ended up coming to this university, and he didn't like to come to his area. He threw him out and requested that he knew where I worked at, just requested us to do all his work, and it's been my account ever since.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
Nice. Well, that's
it's
good. Yeah.
it's cool when a customer only wants you in there. I mean, but it's not so bad with a small account like a couple locations. But this is it's a university. It's not a big university, but it's a
Yeah.
university. They got several kitchens. They've got a field house. They've got a food truck. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, it is good to get requested. It feels good. I actually have I get requested, here and there, and I was
Yeah,
always surprised because even like new, but I'm like a information vomiter. Like I'll just
yeah.
like anything I know, like I'll let you know, and
That
I
comes
think
back.
customers love that. So
Yeah, treat people like human beings. Don't walk in and give them the short answer. Explain to them what you did, what's going on with the equipment. It goes a long way. So
yeah,
that's how I succeed so much as I take my time to explain to customers.
because sometimes I mean you'll get those some managers that don't care. But the ones that do care, it's gonna matter because they're gonna want you out there because you explained it to them and you didn't make them feel like an idiot. And then now they know, and then like they feel good about themselves because they feel like they know more about their equipment. And that's just And I was just like, you know, I
For
get told not
Greg.
to come back. Get out of here, Greg.
I used to say Greg was Grumpy Cat. You remember the Grumpy Cat, the meme? It was like
Oh
the
yeah,
little. That's what
is
Greg
that
looks like.
Greg?
I say Greg looks like Grumpy Cat. He's actually nice. He's got a pretty good sense of humor, but he just looks grumpy all the time. He's got RBF, man, and people just don't know how to take him. So a lot of times they think he's pissed off. And I
Yeah.
mean, the people that love him are the old cafeteria ladies. They love him. Everyone
Oh,
else
they
is
love
kind
them
of
some Greg.
like he's grumpy. He's mean.
Yeah.
So what was
I used
your crap job of the week?
man. Well, I honestly had a pretty decent week, but yesterday we actually changed a drain pan water reservoir on a Crestcore holding cabinet. It's what is it called? The humidity controlled Crestcore heating cabinet, and that's kind of a pain because you gotta pull it out. You gotta lay it on its side. You gotta take the drip pan off the bottom, and then take all the screws out off the reservoir and pull that out. And the only thing that's such a pain about that is the housing over it covers the back 3 screws, so you can't get to them. So you got to put like a flex bit in there, and then pull that out. And it's got like a hot block silicone on it, like a heat rated. So you got to pry that off, and I mean it's not really like a pain, but kind of. I mean it's just kind of one of those set you up for failure things. So we got through it, but it was not a fun ordeal for anyone.
I always like it when you get a call, you do it, and you're like, man, this thing was such a pain in the butt, and then like you talk to someone else, like, no, you could have just done it this way and been done like half the time. I'm like, oh, I wish I would have known that ahead of time.
I'm sure you know of an easy way that I could have done that, but
Man, a lot of times if I haven't done it, I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, I don't know, I haven't done it. I'll tell them the
yeah.
truth.
Well,
But
it's only 3 years old, and the actual drain outlet on it that just comes right out the front of the reservoir. I mean, there was 2 big holes in it. It looked like it had like
how
rotted
much
away.
lime
And
scale was in the pan? Was the pan clean on lime scale?
yeah, I mean, it was
So it's whatever they're cleaning it with doing it.
Yeah. So it's
it's probably wasn't it probably had like impurities in the weld or whatever, and then whatever they're descaling it with probably attacked the weld. That's probably what happened.
they killed it. I mean, there was 2 holes because I got there and it was leaking, and my first thought was that compression fitting was loose, and I tried to tighten that up, and then I pulled the actual drip pan off the bottom, and you could see it clear as day. I mean, it's 2 massive holes, so it was a lot of work for just like you said, probably something self-inflicted, but
oh, dude. Dumb people keep us in business, man. If people were
Hey,
smart,
man.
we wouldn't have a job, dude.
That's
We
true.
wouldn't be in our shoes. So,
Yeah.
all right, man. I think I'm gonna wrap it up. It's been almost an hour.
All right.
I'm gonna keep you. Enjoy your 4-day weekend and have a good Christmas,
Alrighty,
man.
Hopefully you don't get called in tomorrow. You don't have to work tomorrow.
Hey, I'm hoping not. I mean, I got to work regardless. I was already told
Yeah.
if I'm not working in the field, I'm working on training stuff. So we'll see.
Yeah. So, all right, man. Well, I appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to next time. And definitely informative.
All right, see you. Take care, guys.
All right, man. We'll see you.